Before you start your coilover adjustment, you need to know your baseline. Most measurements that you'll see online are going to be from the center of your wheel to the bottom of your fender. I found that measuring from the bottom of my wheel to the fender was a little bit more exact because I don't have a great way to find the perfect center of my wheel center cap. Once you have a baseline for all four corners, you want to get the car off the ground. Pro tip here, if you're jacking from the pinch welds, these little pinch weld savers are going to do your car some favors. If you don't have an impact gun, you want to make sure you break your lug nuts loose prior to getting the car off of the ground. Also, you want to make sure you drop a lug nut and act like nothing happened. Once your wheels are off, you'll have room to adjust your coilovers. I'm going to be adjusting my MeisterR Sport-Z's today, but these principles will apply to any MeisterR coilover or any thread-in body coilover design. These coilovers have 3 separate collars that can be adjusted. This top collar is not one that we're going to adjust today. This is how you adjust your preload, so the load on the spring. The middle collar is your locking collar. It is what locks the preload collar into place. The top 2 collars can be used with the corresponding coilover wrenches for additional leverage while adjusting the coilover. More on that later. And the bottom collar is what locks the threaded shock body into the lower mount. Before you begin your adjustment, I recommend getting a second baseline, which is the distance between these 2 collars on your coilover. You can either use a digital caliper or a tape measure, or you can count exposed threads. I think this is a slightly more exact measurement than the wheel to fender liner, but also with where your coilover sits in your suspension setup, a 1-to-1 ratio is not always present for the level of adjustment on your coilover versus your ride height. Meaning, if you adjust your coilover half an inch, it probably won't equate to half an inch of ride height. It'll probably be a little bit more. These ratios are going to depend on the vehicle that you have. For the NC Miata, it's about 0.9 in the rear and 0.8 in the front. We'll put all the pieces together here in a second on how this translates to your height adjustment. Another quick pro tip here, if your coilovers are pretty dirty, you want to make sure your threads are mostly clean so you don't damage them when you're moving the collars up and down. Now that you have both baselines for your suspension adjustment, you're going to want to loosen the bottom collar so you can either move it up or down based on how you're adjusting your suspension. Here's a quick example of a height adjustment on your NC. If the bottom of your wheel to your fender measures 22 inches and you want to raise your ride height by 1 inch, you simply just need to thread the shock body out of the lower mount 0.9 of an inch because of our motion ratio. Because my coilovers are pretty new, I was able to spin them by hand. If you need additional leverage to adjust the coilover and the desired ride height is lower than your current ride height, utilize the corresponding wrench on the upper collar to twist the shock body into the lower mount. And if the opposite is true, use that wrench on the middle collar to twist the shock body out of the lower mount. Just be careful and make sure that these 2 collars stay locked together, as this is what sets your suspension preload. Simply repeat this process for all 4 corners until you have the desired ride height. Just make sure you secure the lower collar back to the lower mount before you wrap things up. Also, do not forget to retorque your lug nuts back to the required spec. If you're in an NC Miata, that is 85 foot-pounds. We hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you have an affinity for enthusiast cars, especially NC Miatas, you should give us a subscribe and go check out our other content. We'll see you all in the next one.